Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at the experiences of gay men in the military.
Okay.
Specifically, how serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell
Right.
impacted their sense of masculinity.
Interesting.
So you sent over this PhD thesis, The Experiences of Gay Military Men and the Impact on One's Sense of Masculinity by Marcus Christopher Alt.
Yeah, great thesis.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating look at the kind of the internal struggles that these men faced.
Yeah.
The double lives that they felt forced to live.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy to think about because a lot of these guys, their sexual orientation wasn't even a factor when they first decided to join the military.
Yeah.
So why would you sign up for this environment that's potentially hostile?
Well, the thesis highlights a lot of different reasons.
Okay.
Family tradition, a desire for purpose, the appeal of structure, even financial stability.
Right.
One guy actually said that he saw the Marines as like the biggest fraternity.
Wow.
So, these are pretty universal motivations.
Yeah, regardless of your sexual orientation.
So they join up,
Right.
and then boom, don't ask, don't tell, is this constant presence.
Yeah.
These reminders, these threats, just constantly hanging over their heads.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, some of the participants in the study said that the policy itself was often just completely ignored by other service members.
Really?
Yeah, which suggests that there was this disconnect between the official rules and then what was actually happening on the ground.
Okay, so was it the policy itself that was causing all this stress, or was it more just like the culture of the military in general?
Well, that's the big question.
Yeah.
And the thesis doesn't really give a simple answer to that.
Right.
But it definitely shows that there's this tension between those two things. Some guys did encounter blatant negativity,
Right.
stereotypes that gay men were liabilities,
Yeah.
security risks, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But others found support from unexpected places.
Okay.
Straight colleagues,
Yeah.
even high-ranking officers who felt like, hey, if someone can do the job, their sexuality shouldn't matter.
That's interesting. It's like two totally different realities
Yeah,
existing within the same system.
exactly.
But, for a lot of these guys, the hardest part was just living this double life.
Right.
You're constantly hiding this fundamental part of yourself.
Absolutely. And the thesis really details how they had to engage in all these hypermasculine behaviors, laughing at homophobic jokes, even going out of their way to avoid other gay men.
Yeah.
Just to keep up this facade.
Yeah.
Imagine the mental energy that takes every single day.
Oh, it's exhausting just thinking about it. And there's actually a quote from one of the participants in the thesis, and he said that he would have to get drunk just to go into a gay bar when he was off duty.
Wow.
So, clearly there's this internal conflict there, this fear that he had to overcome.
But in a way, it's fascinating how the military itself ended up shading these men's identities, both as gay men and just as men in general.
Yeah, the thesis talks a lot about this idea of resilience, like these men being forced to become incredibly strong just to navigate this impossible situation.
Yeah, and a lot of them actually said that their sexual orientation didn't define their masculinity at all.
Right.
And there's this one quote that really stood out to me.
Okay.
It says, "I am just as much as any other guy in the world. I just happen to love guys."
Powerful.
Right.
It's this rejection of the idea that being gay somehow makes them less of a man.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes you wonder, did they feel this pressure to overcompensate, to constantly prove themselves?
Yeah, it's like they had to earn the right to be seen as just as manly as
Yes.
their straight counterparts.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just their sense of self either.
Right.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
It seeped into their personal lives too.
Yeah. One participant even said that he might be married now
Wow.
if DADT hadn't made dating so complicated.
Yeah. How do you even begin to build a relationship under those conditions?
Right.
It's like the secrecy, the fear of being found out.
Absolutely.
It must have been incredibly difficult.
It's almost like you have to factor this discriminatory policy into something as personal as dating,
Yeah.
which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But even in this system that was designed to keep them hidden, there were these glimmers of hope.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the thesis talks about some of the participants finding support in unexpected places.
Okay.
Family members, straight colleagues, even a 4-star general who stepped in to stop a discharge.
Wow.
So these acts of allyship must have been so powerful.
Yeah, in an environment that often felt so hostile.
Absolutely.
It's like a reminder that human connection can break through even in the most rigid structures.
Yeah, it's really quite amazing.
So I think it's time that we start unpacking how these men defined masculinity for themselves,
Okay.
because the thesis gets really nuanced here. And it really explores this whole spectrum of what it means to be a man.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting because the thesis talks about how some of these participants actually saw the military's emphasis on like traditional masculinity,
Right.
something positive like,
Yeah.
strength, stoicism, all that.
Sure.
So do you think that actually helped them kind of reconcile their own sense of masculinity, even under don't ask, don't tell?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a tension there, right?
Hmm.
You have this pressure to conform to a very specific definition of what it means to be a man.
Right.
But at the same time, some of these guys found that, the challenges of military service,
Yeah.
the discipline, the camaraderie, the shared purpose, it actually helped them develop this stronger sense of self.
Okay.
Even if that self was still partially hidden.
It's like a crucible.
Exactly.
This intense pressure forcing them to become something new.
Yeah, and in this case, like the fire was built on secrecy and fear.
Right.
Imagine coming out in that environment.
Yeah. Does any of the participants actually talk about doing that?
Some did,
Right.
and their stories are incredible.
I bet.
They describe this mix of relief and terror. Relief at finally being able to live authentically, but then terror at the potential consequences.
Right, because your career, your reputation, even your safety is on the line.
Absolutely.
That takes a lot of courage.
One participant, I think his name was Blaine, he talked about coming out while he was deployed overseas.
Whoa.
And he said it was like this overwhelming energy of release and weight off my shoulders.
Yeah.
He realized he'd rather be hated for who he was than loved for who he wasn't.
Wow. That's powerful.
It's a powerful reminder that even in a system as rigid as the military, like individual acts of courage can really create change.
But the repeal of don't ask, don't tell didn't magically fix everything, right?
No, not at all.
Did the thesis actually delve into
Yeah.
what those witch hunts for gay service members look like?
Yeah, there were several participants who shared their experiences with that.
Mm.
It was a dark chapter, for sure.
Yeah.
They described being interrogated, threatened, subjected to these really humiliating investigations, often based on like rumors or outright lies.
Oh, wow.
It's hard to imagine the fear and isolation they must have felt.
Yeah, there was one participant, I think his name was Peter, and he was actually falsely accused of having sex with his roommate and being HIV positive.
Oh, wow.
And an agent from the Naval Investigative Service, interrogated him and even threatened to contact his parents.
It's just heartbreaking to hear about that kind of betrayal, the abuse of power. It just shows how easily people could be targeted by the system.
So it wasn't like some theoretical fear.
Right.
This was their reality.
Exactly.
Did any of the participants talk about how this affected their relationships with other gay service members?
Yeah.
Like you would think that they'd find solace in each other.
You would think so.
Right.
But the fear of being outed could be so intense that some participants actually avoided other gay service members.
Right.
Yeah, they were worried about being associated with them.
So the people who could offer them support almost became like a threat.
Right. It's like the system turned them against each other.
Yeah. Did the participants talk about how they coped with this?
Well, a lot of them talked about focusing on their careers,
Okay.
excelling in their roles,
Yeah.
proving their worth. It was almost like they were fighting back by exceeding expectations.
Yeah.
It was like they were saying, you can try to push me out, but I'm going to be so good at what I do that you can't ignore me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, turning that pressure and fear into motivation.
Did any of them feel that their sexuality actually made them better soldiers in a way?
Some did, yeah. One participant, Ron, he mentioned that hiding his true self actually forced him to become more observant,
Okay.
more attuned to social cues. He said it helped him read people better, which was obviously a valuable skill in his role.
So even in this environment that was designed to suppress them, they found ways to adapt and thrive.
Exactly. And there were also stories of finding support from straight colleagues, commanding officers, even that 4-star general we talked about earlier who intervened to stop a discharge.
Right.
So it just shows that even within a system that's built on conformity and exclusion, there's still room for kindness and allyship.
Yeah, those stories definitely offer a glimmer of hope.
Absolutely.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about how the repeal of don't ask, don't tell changed things.
Okay.
Did it bring about this immediate sweeping change, or was it more complicated than that?
It was definitely more complicated.
Okay.
The thesis goes into this, and it's not a simple answer.
Right.
You know, you would think that repealing a discriminatory policy would instantly make everything better, but that's rarely how it works.
Yeah.
Culture shifts slowly.
I'm curious to hear what the participants thought about it.
Yeah.
Did they see the repeal as a victory, or were they skeptical?
Well, it was a mix of both. Some felt that, even though the policy was gone, the underlying attitudes hadn't really changed. One guy said it was still a battle.
Wow.
That people's deeply held beliefs don't just vanish overnight.
So the fear was still there, even without the threat of being discharged.
Exactly. It became more about social and cultural consequences rather than legal ones.
Right.
So some people still felt the need to hide,
Okay.
to carefully manage their interactions, to avoid making waves.
Yeah, that kind of constant vigilance must be exhausting.
Absolutely.
But I imagine there were others who saw it as a positive step,
Yeah, for sure.
even if it wasn't perfect.
Several participants talked about how the repeal opened up new possibilities.
Like what?
Well, being openly gay in the military,
Yeah.
having their relationships acknowledged, being able to advocate for their rights without fear of reprisal.
Right.
So for them, it was a huge step towards equality, even if there was still work to be done.
It makes sense. Yeah. Policy change is a starting point, but culture change is a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly.
Did the participants talk about what they thought it would take to create real lasting change within the military?
A lot of them believe that it would require a generational shift in attitudes,
Okay.
both within the military and in society as a whole. One guy even said that it would take the old guard dying out for those changes to fully take hold.
Wow.
Kind of bleak, but maybe realistic.
Yeah, it's like you can change the laws, but you can't legislate people's hearts and minds.
Right.
But even if the changes are gradual, it's still change.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that these men, by sharing their stories, they're contributing to that change. They're challenging the status quo, pushing the conversation forward.
Right.
Their experiences, their resilience, their courage, it all lays the groundwork for a more inclusive and equitable future.
Yeah, it's incredibly powerful that they're willing to be so vulnerable.
Absolutely.
It really makes you think about how masculinity itself is viewed, not just in the military, but like in society as a whole.
Right.
So do you think that these men's experiences kind of challenge those traditional notions of what it means to be a man?
I think they absolutely do. The thesis touches on this and highlights how a lot of the participants really rejected that very narrow definition of masculinity.
Okay.
They talk about strength, honor, protecting others, standing up for what's right, qualities that go beyond just, physical prowess or emotional stoicism.
Right. So they redefine those concepts through their own experiences,
Yeah.
proving that you can be strong and resilient, even vulnerable,
Right.
and still embody those core values.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that their experiences under Don't Ask, Don't Tell often force them to develop a different kind of strength.
Okay.
The strength to endure, to adapt, to compartmentalize.
Right.
Which is a testament to their resilience, but it also kind of makes you wonder about the long-term impact of that.
Yeah, it's like they had to build this psychological armor just to survive.
Right.
What would it take to create a military environment where that armor isn't necessary?
That's the goal. Yeah.
A truly inclusive and equitable military. And I think it starts with leadership. Yeah. At all levels, being genuinely committed to fostering a culture of respect and understanding.
So it's more than just changing policies.
Absolutely.
It's about changing attitudes and behaviors.
Exactly. And it requires concrete actions.
Like what?
Robust diversity training, holding individuals accountable for their words and actions, creating safe spaces for reporting discrimination or harassment.
So it's about making sure that everyone feels seen, heard, and valued.
Right.
Regardless of their sexual orientation.
Absolutely. And it's about peer-to-peer accountability, too.
Okay.
Service members need to feel empowered to challenge homophobic language and behavior.
Yeah.
To call out their comrades when they cross the line. That's how you shift a culture from the ground up.
This research focuses specifically on gay men.
Right?
But what insights do you think we could gain from, exploring the experiences of other LGBTQ plus service members?
I think we'd see some similar themes for sure.
Like the resilience and the struggle to reconcile one's identity with the demands of military culture. But we'd also hear unique stories that really highlight the intersectionality of identity.
Okay.
How sexism, racism, transphobia, other forms of discrimination compound the challenges.
It's a reminder that creating a truly inclusive environment means understanding and addressing the needs of all individuals,
Exactly.
not just one group.
It's about recognizing that diversity makes us stronger, more adaptable, more effective as a fighting force.
Well, this deep dive has definitely been eye-opening.
It has.
Thank you so much for helping us unpack this complex and important topic.
My pleasure. I think it's crucial that we keep these conversations going,
Yeah.
to learn from the past and to work towards a future where everyone can serve openly and proudly without fear or compromise.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us on another deep dive. We hope you learned something new today.
And we encourage you to keep questioning, keep learning, and keep pushing for a more just and equitable world. Until next time.